With a crash test according to the Euro NCAP methodology, the Sharan is unsafe by today's standards, only 6 points for a frontal impact. The dummy driver left his head into the steering wheel before the airbag opened, hit his knee painfully on the instrument panel and suffered significant overloads of the chest from the seat belt straps. The body crumpled beyond measure, the floor floated, leaving no proper space for the feet. In the 7-seat version, the trunk volume is small, but it is worth removing the third-row seats, and 852 liters of luggage will already enter the windows, and if you donate the middle one, 2,610. The floor area in the latter case is 2.03 x 1.45 m, than housing for a rainy day. Such a result is predictable. After all, a significant part of the length of the car is given to the cabin. The engine compartment, which should extinguish most of the kinetic energy, was left with crumbs. Compared to residential mansions, the engine compartment looks like a miserable utility room. Engine. The tight layout makes it difficult to maintain the motor. In the photo AWC 1.8 turbo. VIN is located behind the window on the frill, duplicated behind the windshield, in circles, and on a sticker in the trunk, under the right seat belt reel. The cramped compartment makes engine maintenance and repair very difficult. True, they are unlikely to face a serious capital up to a run of 300 to 350,000 kilometers. It happens that the cylinder piston group lives even more, but the periphery of the motors requires caress of the hands. We change the air filter with particular care. The lid latches are easy to break off, which makes the joint with the body lose its tightness, opening a loophole for uncleaned air. First of all, it will go to the airflow sensor, the active surface of which does not tolerate dirt, and secondly, to the cylinders. The extra abrasive is also not good for them. The stabilizer struts travel an average of 35,000 kilometers. The upper supports sag and begin to knock at 50,000 kilometers. We change the brake pads after 45,000. The discs are half as often, but wear is very dependent on driving style. Perhaps the most common 1.8-liter AJH/AWC gasoline units have turbocharger problems due to oil savings and haste. After a trip with increased loads, you can't immediately turn off the engine. Let it idle for a couple of minutes so that the oil cools down a bit, and most importantly, so that the exhaust manifold cools down, next to which the oil line pipe goes to the turbine. In it, from overheating, blood clots of coke are formed, dooming the pressurization unit to oil starvation. Some experts recommend periodically, on average, through maintenance, to remove and flush the channel in the tube with the solvent, and if it is too late and the turbocharger needs to be replaced, then do not save on a relatively inexpensive new tube. The dealer advises to use the recommended oil and change it on time. We believe that both are useful. With careful operation, you don't have to worry about the rear independent suspension on Y-shaped levers, but if overloads are neglected, then rear shock absorbers may ask for 100,000 kilometers. On diesel engines, AFN, AVG, AHU, ANU, AUI, boost is much less common. Here the exhaust temperature is lower, and the oil change is stipulated by the regulations twice as often, after 7.5 thousand kilometers. But there is another catch. After replacing the timing belt, 70 to 90,000 kilometers, respectively, 90 to 115 and 130 horsepower, it is necessary to set the injection advance angle, and this is difficult to do without special devices. It's all about the conical, without keys, fit of the pulleys on the injection pump and camshafts, so the marks inevitably scatter during disassembly. To catch them, you need a 15.45 mm rod mandrel, a special bar, an adapter, a watch-type micrometer and, of course, a certain skill. In the absence of any of the components, it is better to entrust the work to specialists. The wiring of the body position sensor, circle, sometimes rots from winter salt compresses, at the command of which the tilt of the headlight beam changes, and the axis of the handbrake actuator, arrow, turns sour. In general, engines digest our fuel well. Gasoline units require only regular replacement of spark plugs after 30 to 45,000 kilometers. On these 6 engines, AAA, AMI, and AYL, some unfortunate masters sometimes save time and do not change the candles on the far, from the radiator head. It's hard to get there. Interruptions in the operation of the motor will not take long. Fortunately, even though the converter is very tolerant of misfires, it rarely fails. The dealer recommends flushing the nozzles without dismantling. Uneven engine operation is a sign of timeliness. Of course, the frequency depends on the amount of resins in the fuel. the more often, sometimes after 30,000 kilometers. What pleases, an excess of soot does not lead to valve sticking. Obviously, the power of the spring allows you to remove the ward valve in time from fatal contact with the piston, but you should not blindly rely on what has been said. Having lost proper breathing or part of the compression due to soot, get a lump under the saddle, you can significantly lose traction, or even not start the engine in the morning. There are many such cases in the memory of dealers. The fuel level sensor in gasoline is also hard. Sometimes, by 80,000 kilometers, its rheostat is frayed, depriving the driver of information about the real reserve in the tank. More oily diesel fuel at the very least lubricates a pair of leash resistor, so such malfunctions are rare on diesel engines. We change glow plugs on a diesel engine, as a rule, after 60 to 80,000 kilometers, at the first signs of a triple of a cold engine. Usually only one candle is to blame for this, which we calculate by the loss of energy appetite, a current of less than 10 amperes. If there are no current clamps at hand, the garage method is also suitable. We are looking for the culprit at least redness with the ignition on. Just to see this, you will need to unscrew the nozzles, and then change their O-rings gaskets. Therefore, it is easier, and sometimes cheaper, to change the whole set of candles. As you know, diesel engines emit less heat than gasoline engines. In order to have enough to warm up the huge cabin, some configurations of diesel Charans have a heater, an autonomous heater that does not allow the engine temperature to drop when driving in cold conditions. The principle of the stove is simple. It turns on automatically whenever the engine is cold, immediately after starting, for quick warming up, and when cooling down on the go. But there are more advanced options. Petrol Charans are often equipped with a separate autonomous heater. It warms up only the passenger compartment, and in diesel engines it heats both the passenger compartment and the engine, heater plus preheater. According to the principle of operation, all such devices are of a liquid type. The coolant of the engine serves as a coolant, only they are embedded into the cooling system in different ways and are powered, depending on the preferences of the motor, by gasoline or diesel fuel. Of course, the control units are also different, because one needs to maintain the programmed interior temperature, while the other needs not to forget about the motor. But the reasons for interruptions in work are common. True, more often they happen because of a trifle. There is not enough fuel in the tank, the reserve lamp is on, the battery is discharged, or the exhaust pipe is clogged, for example, with snow. If 5 attempts to launch were unsuccessful and an error was displayed on the scoreboard, we are in no hurry to panic. Some can be erased on your own. Key manipulations on the remote control are described in detail in the instructions for the car. By simply removing the terminal from the battery, alas, it will not be possible to reset the brain. Worse, if during repair work in the engine compartment the connection of the water pipes was mixed up. Violation of the fluid flow can create local hotbeds of overheating with sad consequences for the motor or heater. Therefore, in order to avoid confusion, we must mark the hoses before dismantling. In general, there are not many problems with the Sharan, although the German TÜV thinks otherwise. If the older models are in the middle, 30th place out of 57 among 10 to 11-year-old cars and 52nd out of 82 among 8 to 9-year-olds, then fresh 2-3-year-olds are already in the penultimate place. We believe that there is no need to panic, because, unlike the West, where Charans are in demand among family youth, rather mature people buy such cars from us. And they are trained by life to avoid any conflicts, both with technology and in the family. Body. Sharan is a 5-door minivan with hinged side doors. The cheapest versions of it can be externally recognized by the unpainted bumpers in body color, although most of the cars in operation are well equipped. By the way, this minivan is not German. It was produced at the facilities of the related seat. However, the Spanish citizenship, according to the servicemen, did not harm the car at all. Assembly control was carried out by the German side with German pedantry. So long. When buying a Sharan, you need to be careful. The cars were produced not only in 6- and 7-seater versions. The cheapest versions were equipped with only 5 seats. In the latter case, additional seats that are installed in the luggage compartment will have to be purchased. The most prestigious modification is Carrot. It has 6 individual chairs with armrests. Moreover, its front seats turn 180 degrees. In addition, in all other modifications, including Carrot, separate second and third row seats are removable, and if necessary, they can be removed from the passenger compartment. In the stowed state, When all 3 rows of seats are installed, the Sharan trunk is one of the smallest among competitors, but in general, the car's carrying capacity is one of the largest. A variety of power units should satisfy the most demanding customers. For the economical, a 1.9-liter turbo diesel was intended, the initial power of which is 90 liters. Width eventually increased to 110 liters. Width. The motor is generally reliable. When replacing the timing belt every 60 TSC, km must be adjusted to the required pressure of the injection pump. By the way, in most other units, the gas distribution mechanism is driven by a belt. The exception is the VR6 engine. It uses a circuit, which, as a rule, serves the entire life of the motor. This 2.8-liter petrol unit is notable for its considerable fuel consumption, over 13 liters in the urban cycle. In addition, this motor, like no other, is afraid of overheating. Therefore, the radiator must be flushed annually. The 1.8-liter turbocharged petrol engine is more economical. If the owner does not forget about the basic rules for dealing with the turbine, as a rule, there are no problems with the engine. It is not uncommon to find Sharan with a 2.0-liter gasoline engine. Of course, such an engine, suitable for an ordinary sedan, is not enough for an almost 2-ton minivan. Fire with him is unlikely to succeed. But this motor has already been rolled back on many representatives of the Volkswagen concern and has proven itself to be quite reliable. Transmission. There are also no comments on gearboxes, a 5-speed mechanics, and a 4-speed automatic with proper operation, as a rule, do not cause problems. In addition to front-wheel drive, there are also versions with synchro all-wheel drive. The specialists who consulted us could not recall any troubles with the Sharan all-wheel drive transmission. Suspension. Thanks to the knockdown, running, and informative steering, the minivan is distinguished by good stability and controllability. Front and rear suspension independent. Most often, you will have to service the front one. About 40,000 kilometers on our roads there are anti-roll bar struts. 60 to 70,000 kilometers the silent blocks of the front levers hold, and after another 10 to 20,000, ball bearings will have to be replaced. But the rear suspension parts last much longer, about 100,000 kilometers. Steering. The rack and pinion steering, equipped with the hydraulic booster, is reliable, and the tie rod ends can run up to 50,000 kilometers. The brake system is also demanding, which, thanks to the use of disc mechanisms of the front and rear wheels, is distinguished by good efficiency. Increases it in the ABS system. The popularity of the VW Sharan determines its high market value, which is higher than that of many peer competitors. At the same time, this minivan will delight potential buyers with good stability, handling, and reliability. And, what is important, the cost of spare parts for Sharan is not very high. There is a wide selection of these minivans on the domestic market of used cars.